I recently got licensed as a minister, but that was just the formality for what I've been doing for 27 years. I graduated from Wesley Theological Seminary 27 years ago, and I did not hear the call to pastor, but I heard the call to inspire. And when they offered me a church, I said, I can't take a church because I really don't hear that call in that office. But I do want to inspire people, and I set out to inspire people first as a musician and as a singer and as an entertainer, to inspire people with music. And that led from there, as Harold told, to my experience with being fired and replaced by a karaoke machine. And it was out of that I said, this is not the end of my story. I've had a setback, but a setback is nothing but a setup for a comeback. And it was out of that I started giving little speeches to kids about staying away from drugs. And from the little kids, the teachers would say, could you come to my teachers association? And then someone there would say, can you come to my church? And someone there would say, could you come to my company? And it started to grow. And then Les Brown heard about the fact that I mixed music and motivation and invited me to be on tour with him and Gladys Knight. And that allowed me to get into the corporate arena, and corporate groups to start to hear about me. And from there, I got the little radio show, and the radio show got syndicated, and then book publishers heard about me and invited me to come and write books. And it all continued to grow. And all of that was because I got fired. But all of that, and the music, and the speaking, and the books, and the television and radio, I've always seen it as ministry. I just was always under the radar. So when people would say, you know, I see you got a degree in theology. Are you a preacher? I said, oh, no. They said, because, you know, a preacher can't come in here and speak to these school kids. I said, no problem. I'm just a motivational speaker. But I'd get in there, and I'd talk to them about the carpenter from Galilee who changed my life. I talked to them about the fact that if you just want to change your life, you start to think different. If you can believe it, you can achieve it. And that as a man believes, so shall he be. And so I've learned over the years that my message is not the traditional ministry. It's a very unique ministry. That the job and my message is always to inspire people, to pour into the word is inspired. It's taken from the Greek word to breathe. So the inspire means to breathe anew. If you go to the hospital, Harold, and you went to visit an old friend and they were elderly, and you walked in and they said, Mr. Bell, that person expired this morning at 10 o'clock. You knew that their breath of life went out of them at 10 o'clock. But if you said somebody was inspired, the breath of life blew into them. They were inspired. You ever see a football team where one of the players goes down, maybe I'll give you a great example, was Sean Taylor was killed in a robbery. The Redskins played at another level for those next few games because they were inspired. There was a breathe anew. So we want to breathe anew into people, breathe anew into their possibilities, into their futures, and breathe anew into their lives, that they can do whatever you dream and believe you can do. So this whole new part of my life now is just a matter of being inspired to do something bigger and greater and grander. And as I told the people that night I got licensed, I said, I've had success, but the rest and the best is yet to come. I constantly say to myself that we must make a commitment to get better. A personal commitment. Not a goal, not just a thought or wish, but make a commitment to get better. And why I say that is because if you want better children, you got to become a better parent. If you want a better relationship, you got to become a better partner. And if you want a better future in your life, you got to become a better you. So if we're going to get better children, we got to work on being better parents, better people. I have had to struggle over the years to be a better parent. I'm very proud that I have two children, and one is an entrepreneur. She's 35. My son just finished Howard Law School and just passed the New York bar. I'm very proud of him. But I constantly had to talk to myself to say, am I being the best parent I can be? Am I being the most caring? And am I listening to them? And am I encouraging them? So one of the things I tell parents to do is to always encourage your children, even when they're messing up. Encourage them and criticize them without being critical. So, if your child messes up, rather than saying, you know, you're stupid. You know that was stupid. Rather than saying that, saying, somebody as bright as you. I'm disappointed that you made that choice. Because you are smarter than that. And use it as a teaching moment. And always encourage your children. My son was about 5 years old. I had just started this process of getting better. Reading positive books. I made a commitment to read more books. And I'm on a campaign to ask people to read more books. I ask everybody to read more books. What's the difference between a man who can't read and a man who doesn't read? Very little. So I encourage people to read books. So I started reading. I got on a reading campaign years ago. I turned off the television and started reading. And I am now reading at least a book a week. And I'm trying to get 2 books a week. I'm taking speed reading class so I read more. But one of the things I read was about changing your thinking, getting better. So my son was a little boy. And he was about 5 years old. And he walked by me one day and I said, oh, I read that the other day. Oh, yeah. Hey, son. He said, yeah, Dad. I said, you were born for greatness. Have a good day. And I walked away. And the next day he saw him. I said, son, you were born for greatness. He said, come on, Dad. What are you talking about? He kind of blew it off. I said, no, you were born for greatness. Have a good day. I didn't make a big deal about it. Every day I'd say, hey, William, how you doing? You were born for greatness. And that went on for day after day, week after week, month after month. About 6 months later, one day I said, hey, William, how you doing? He said, I'm born for greatness. And so, when you get that kind of seeding, you know, we must pour into them what we want them to be. And we must live the life also that we want them to see. And so, it's hard to teach what you don't know. It's hard to lead where you won't go. So, I've always tried to be a man of integrity for my children to see. And if anything I want them to be able to see is that I am a man of integrity. I remember going to a funeral one time. I didn't know the lady who had died, but I knew her son. And her son was a person of character and integrity. And I went to the funeral because of the kind of life she must have lived in front of him, that he would become the kind of person that he became. And so when I left that funeral, I called both my children. I said, let me tell you something. Here's what I want for you to do. I want you to live a kind of life that if no one ever reads my books, ever sees me on television, ever hears me on radio, ever hears me speak, ever hears my music, never knows who I am, that they'll come to my funeral because of the kind of life you live. That's my goal. All right? From my daughter, as I said, I had 2 children. My daughter is the older, and she was my challenge child. Everybody got a challenge child. She was my challenge child. And she couldn't hear it from me. I'm a motivation speaker. She couldn't hear it from me. But one day I called one of my friends, Keith Harrell, who recently passed away, but a great speaker, wrote the book Attitude is Everything. And I said, look, my daughter's driving me crazy. He said, let me talk to her. He talked to her for about 20 minutes and shifted. She shifted, and I hadn't had a problem from her since. Amazing. And we've had more parents who say that same video has transformed their children. It's called Dare to Dream, Dare to Win. The greatest story I had was I was at the CIA, speaking for the CIA. I came to the place, spoke, and a gentleman who was the director said, can I talk to you after this program? Went in the back room in his office, and he started tearing up in his eyes. He said, my son, I raised him right, I took him to the right place, but he started hanging around with the wrong kids and messing up. I don't know what to do. I said, watch this video with him. He said, I said, go home, don't tell him he needs to watch it, just say, I like your opinion on this. He said, I'll do it. I came back about 6 months later, and I couldn't get in the door before he was hugging my neck. He said, you remember me? I said, sure I do. He said, you remember the video? I said, yeah, I do. He said, let me tell you what happened. I took the video home, I did what you said. Son, I want your opinion on this guy. He watched it with me. I didn't think he'd watch it because he was ADD. The next day he watched it again. The next day he watched it again. About 2 weeks later, I called my wife about midday and said, let me talk to Junior. She said, Junior is not here. Junior's at work. What you mean Junior's at work? Junior ain't got a job. What you mean Junior? She said, Junior got up this morning, went to the mall, went from store to store until he found somebody who would hire him. And from that time, that was his first thing he did. Second thing he did, he fired those negative friends and people who were in his life. He got rid of them. And the third thing he did, Junior went back to school after dropping out, and now I'm Inputs determine outputs. But Les Brown does a little piece that I wrote about in one of my first books by Burton Braley. And it simply goes like this. If you want a thing bad enough to go out and fight for it, to work day and night for it, to give up your time, your peace, and your sleep for it. If all that you dream and scheme is about it, and life seems useless and worthless without it, if you gladly sweat for it and fret for it and lose all of your terror of the opposition for it, if you simply go after that thing that you want with all of your capacity, strength and sagacity, faith, hope, and confidence, and stern pertinacity, if neither cold, poverty, famine, nor gout, sickness, nor pain, or body and brain can keep you away from the thing that you want, if dogged and grim you beseech and besell it, with the help of God, you will surely get it. God bless y'all. Thank y'all for letting me be a part of this historic night.